everybody. Welcome. Not on the screen yet. There we go. I'm Johnny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Coming to you live as always, late as always. We appreciate you for watching. Lots going on tonight. In addition to our show, right now, the final, arguments are being made in the confirmation for Amy Coney Barrett. Hopefully, we'll see a vote tonight. But we do have our usual list of topics, so let's go ahead and pull that up now. Thank you so much for watching. While we're getting the show underway, make sure to share, like, and comment on the show. We'll incorporate that into the show's broadcast. We do have a couple guys who haven't been around in a while, so I'm excited about that. Our topics: final presidential debate. Did it make an impact on the election or not? Rappers for Trump. That has probably been maybe the most interesting thing that's happened over the past week, and we'll pick that apart as to why it's happening. And amendments 2 and 3 here in Florida. We kind of breezed through the amendments in the last show, so we want to kind of pick those apart because those are kind of some of our favorite ones. And then Pelosi officially announcing her campaign to be reelected to House Speaker. And of course, not only the Republicans that are wanting to make that sure that doesn't happen, but also there might be some Democrats who don't want to see that happen. So before we get into those topics, let's go ahead and turn it over to the big table and see who joins us today. Hey, there we go. These two guys haven't been with us for a while, and we've missed you guys. All right, I'd be lying if I didn't say so.
We've missed you as well, Johnny.
From left to right, we got Chris Licata there, sporting a very cool little colonial hat, hiding his need for a haircut. You Army guys or Navy guys in your haircuts, well, military guys in general, guys are like religious about it. And on the right-hand side of Chris Verkylen, we've missed you, buddy. It's been a while.
Hey, I missed you as well. I've been living in the forest for the last 9 days, so that's been nice.
I know, didn't invite anybody, but that's all right.
One with nature, you know. With you guys there, it would ruin the experience.
Should you have picked a different 9 days? You know, like maybe 9 days from now to go into the woods for 9 days. It's probably safest.
Why is that? I
mean, I don't know. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about concerns that people need to.
I don't know about you, but I've been making sure this doesn't happen. So
yes,
I think the best 9 days to go would be basically November 1st through the 9th.
Right.
I think that's what
I'm alluding to.
Yeah, exactly.
Like go for a Halloween trip, but no, you went for you went like. Or mid-October. Is that like the proper hunting season? I'm not familiar.
Opening week is the highest likelihood of getting a harvest of a deer because the most are still alive. Unfortunately, there is some circumstances this year with the movement of the animals that made it a little bit harder to do. So I'm going back a couple of weeks from now to try again.
Did you get anything?
Not this time.
Oh.
I've consistently harvested every year for like 6 years, not this one.
Waste of a trip. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure it was great. So the final presidential debate took place last week. And of course, I think it may have just confirmed everybody's votes. Of course, millions of people have already voted. I don't know that there's a whole lot of independents left who haven't made up their mind in some regard. But of course, the media will always find somebody to kind of fit that undecided narrative. And I think watching this debate, it seemed to me that we saw a much more, and obviously I mean this for Trump, a more composed Trump, someone who I think took a lot of advice from the first debate and realized that you just let Biden be Biden and you're going to have a pretty good showing in this debate. Chris, I mean, you had some takeaways from this debate. Where do you think this debate maybe had the most impact, if any?
I don't think anyone had their minds changed, obviously. I think that the independents and moderates, I think they saw a side of Trump that was a little more statesman-like. I think he was able to project a calm, cool demeanor, unlike last time. I don't know if it was the Rona that had him acting a fool and talking over everybody, but he was able to maintain a more composed version of himself this time.
That medication will do that to you.
So I'm a firm believer in elections are not won, they're lost, in which case this last debate gave Joe Biden a lot of room to gaffe, and that's what needed to happen. During the first debate, I think Trump just tried to kind of knock him off his rocker, literally, a little too hard. And when it didn't work, it was just a lot of talking over each other, where Trump kind of reined it back in and, gave lines, like, who built the cages, Joe? And then it's just silence. It's just...
If there would have been cricket chirps during those silent moments, it would have been priceless.
Right.
Like the fly on Mike Pence's head, there could have been a cricket on Joe Biden's podium.
Well, and I didn't want to take your thunder on that, but I mean, that was the line of the night. And it continues to be the line of the night. And you have now the media covering for Joe. Well, they're saying, oh, well, this was the picture that the campaign used, and it's from 2019 and not from 2014, which is when the cages were built. And so they at least acknowledge that fact. But of course, they're always playing defense for the left. And so... Really, I mean, I've never seen a more stunned politician on the world stage like that than when he hit him with that line. And it was, I don't know if it was prepared or if it was off the cuff, as Trump usually is, but it literally stunned him.
You think Biden was more stunned with that one, or more stunned with the what have you done? Why didn't you do all your plans? And all Biden had to say back was, well, Republican Congress, and then there was like 5 minutes of just empty airtime. It was a bad showing.
I think the cages line really kind of punched him in the gut, like took the wind out of him. I think the other one where he responded, well, I had a Republican Congress, I think that just was deflating. I think that was a big blow, I think, to the campaign in general.
Please clap.
That was
pretty much.
Yeah. Remember he was in front of the army. He's like, "Clap, you stupid bastards!" He was gonna say it to the audience, but they were all like, "You couldn't do that this time." What's funny about the dead silence after he was saying he had a Republican Congress is that it was a damned lie. He had a House majority, a Senate supermajority, and the presidency. All the key factors needed to get legislation passed in our government system, and he did not utilize them to fulfill the things that he said he was going to do. Now, of course,
they did one thing.
What's that?
ACB, not ACB, the Affordable Care
ACA,
ACA,
right.
ACA. That almost made me lose my insurance.
Yeah,
but the thing
that
is,
terrible thing. It's like, and they hold it up as this amazing thing, and they want to take it even a step further. And it's like, right, you needed a super majority in the Senate just to pass this terrible thing that we have to live with now for the last 10 years, and hopefully we don't have to live with it.
Well, as we all know, politicians have to have something left to campaign on. If you do everything you're saying you're going to do, there's nothing for you to run for next time. So it's politically expedient to not do what you say you're going to do.
Well, I mean, not for the Trump campaign. They've done like almost all the things they said they were going to do 4 years ago, and now they're like, well, there's still more stuff to do. Now we look at new problems.
There's a list on DonaldTrump.com of things that he's done. If in case you were wondering, what has Trump done? There's actually a list of hundreds of things that he's promised and delivered.
Well, I think if anything, it certainly has solidified, I think, an argument for term limits. Because the fact that somebody, again, like him, has been in Congress for so long with so little to show for it other than being vice president. And what did he even accomplish as vice president, right? He's basically taking credit for President Obama's policies.
I mean, he made a lot of money.
Lots of sniffing.
Yeah.
He made a lot of money somehow. It's like,
I think he's worth like $9 million or something like that.
It is a weird thing in the American political system that you get elected to Congress as a middle class person. Most people enter Congress.
The Florida State Senate wages are like $36,000 a year. You cannot make $9 million bucks on state senator wages, and of course the wages up to then. Like no one's making $9 million and making like what 174 for Congress or something like that.
Right, and it's like where are you making this money? It's like you either invested really wisely.
All of them invested really wisely. It's like way better than the commercial average for investments.
It's like, that smells like some insider trading. I don't know.
You think so? Jesus. I mean, no, look, and the truth is that when you make the rules, you also get to lay out the consequences, and they're not going to start jailing and they're not going to start punishing their own, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. Let's remember, these folks have had plenty of opportunities to implement term limits, to put people in jail for insider trading, and they continually find ways to avoid it. And that's on both sides of the aisle, that they're guilty of that. I mean, and we see people benefiting from being in the legislature, even here in Florida. where, yeah, they're making a measly $30,000 a year for being up there, but there's a huge network of business that is then
those consultant dollars.
Yeah, no, that basically just magically show up at your business's doorstep, regardless of what type of business you're in, simply because you're in the legislature.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin for a part-time legislature, which, I mean, I like that Florida has a part-time legislature, but it does scratch one's head sometimes when a lot of legislators, their businesses all of a sudden do really well after they were elected. Now, many of them, I know a lot of them who their businesses were doing well to begin with, so it's not.
I will say a lot of the ones that I know
are successful business people to begin with, and that's legitimate. It's some of them you go like, you weren't doing really well before, now you got elected and now your business took off, and that happens at the federal level, that happens at all levels.
So as far as the debate moderator, what do you guys feel about that? I think she did I was pleasantly surprised with her performance as far as not being a partisan hack. I mean, way better than Chris Wallace did, in my opinion.
I mean, she's still carrying water for Democrats, I think.
I don't think so. I think is she more likely a Democrat and liberal? Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I don't. I think she handled the whole thing really well, and I think a part of that was also the president, really sticking to the rules and being respectful of her as the moderator.
That's true. That's true. She tried. As for a partisan, she did really, really well at moderating from the middle, but it was still obvious that she was a partisan, which is why I'd prefer the model of let's just have two partisans as moderators cross-examine.
Yeah.
Like
I love the idea.
Like that just sounds, because then if you had like Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow as the moderators, right?
Tucker Carlson.
Like Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow. Like I don't know. Then you know where they're coming from, and there's not this attempt at being neutral is, I think
we'd get more information out of the debate if we had that kind of setup, because these people are on TV every single day making these points. Right. The politicians aren't exactly making the points that are zingers. Like after the fact, when you watch the wrap-up shows, they produce so much more information than you had in the debate.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
but I will say there's one point when I think her name is Savannah, right? She was like, Donald Trump asked Joe a question that was very pointed, and she goes, "Tell us, Joe, why didn't you do that?" And I was like, "Oh my God, she's not a partisan hack. This woman's amazing for that, just that moment in time."
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, she didn't let him off easy. And there were certainly some follow-up questions where, you're pleasantly surprised because you're like, wow, I didn't expect the moderator to go there.
I think a lot of follow-up questions are natural. It's like when a question is asked and it's avoided, there's a natural follow-up question that appears in most people's heads.
Yeah.
It's like when you don't ask it, that's being a partisan hack.
Absolutely.
Right? When you ask it, and for some reason I think she got kind of berated by the left for
not being a partisan hack enough?
Not being enough of a partisan hack. There was some points where she was, I think, still her own bias was showing. So she wasn't being a partisan hack.
I did see. So there were some points in time where Donald Trump's actual point delivery was conveniently at the very end of his time to talk, and she's like, "I'm going to ask another question now." When he was delivering the goods, I did see that a lot. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if it was her bias kind of playing into it. Did you notice that as well?
Yeah, to me it sounded. I felt like it wasn't convenience. It was I'm just going to ask a new question here because you're stealing the show.
He repeated himself a lot too, so I will say that maybe that was a trigger to move on to the next question.
Yeah, so again, thank you everybody for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. While you're watching the shows, you can see there in the background, we've got, I'd be remiss if I didn't fill in for an evil and saying Cocaine Mitch there in the background. Senator Mitch McConnell, Majority Leader, who thinks he has the votes to get Amy Coney Barrett into the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll see a vote unfurl tonight. That's going to be pretty exciting, so we're keeping an eye on that. And of course, the rest of today's topics. Let's see. Well, I had a hotkey for that. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. we were just talking about that final presidential debate. And so going over to our comment section, thank you as always for those leaving us comments, and our buddy Hector is always filling in some great gaps. He said another big line from the debate was Joe Biden's agenda is made in China. Mine is made in the USA. Which
that's a good line. It's a little
that
scripted.
is a marketer. Okay. Like that's where you see Trump's marketing brilliance, because one of the things as a marketer myself, that is where you see what has made him so successful. The fact that he can come up with these one-liners, these zingers, these moments that can capture what he's trying to say. Right, that's incredibly difficult to do, and that just says so much in so little, and it's something that people are going to remember. And now, in regards to insider trading and all that kind of stuff happening in Congress that we were just talking about, it's Hector says, well, if we put these people in jail or otherwise be forced from their positions, couldn't it result in an unstable government? No, I think, in fact, if anything, it reinforces the government.
Well, I think at the very least, what we were talking about earlier was, and we were getting a little off subject with it, but it was term limits. Excuse me, and how it would at the very least prevent someone from doing that for 47 years. We're not necessarily saying like, well, throw them out and put them in jail, throw away the key. It's more of there's a limited amount of power that you can have for a period of time.
But you can run 2 terms as city council, 2 terms as mayor, 2 terms as state senator, 2 terms
as... And that's why most conservatives support term limits at all levels, is because you shouldn't sit in a position forever with power, because you can abuse that power, whether that's abusing that power in a political sense or abusing that power in a personal sense. It's still an abuse of power. So limit the abuse of power by limiting the time in office.
I was of that same philosophy for a while, but then our friend Joe Wicker, who comes on pretty often, made the great point of, you should not tell me who I can vote for. If I'm going to vote for somebody, I can vote for them. Of course, primaries are a thing. If you don't like that person, you can always vote them out in the primaries. This is an option that can circumvent the need for term limits in the beginning. It requires engaged voters.
It requires engaged voters. It also, the counter argument to that is, for most of American history, people wouldn't seek office more than for a few terms, and then they would return home to the farm or to the family. Because it's not like they were commuting to Congress like they do now. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to go home to their families. They said, okay, I did this for 2-4 years and it's time to go. So there was almost a natural term limit because...
So you're saying blame airplanes?
Well, no, that's what Joe Biden's saying. Anyways.
Sorry, guys. I just...
that was a fun little
in the weeds.
Side subject. Yeah.
In the weeds.
Yeah. No, I got lost a little bit. We're having some internet issues here at our studio, and so I apologize to those of you who may be watching this live, but we're going to keep going. Getting back on track into our topics for today, the next thing we were going to talk about was actually rappers for Trump. And the kind of a weird situation that has kind of transpired over the past week. Ice Cube put out a video, early in the week, talking about how he basically created this contract with Black America, which I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. But in talking about this with Anibal and a few others on Facebook, it was harking back to Newt Gingrich's contract with America. So it's a great political reference, and what I think a lot of people underestimate about the old school rappers. I don't want to speak for the new school rappers because I don't understand those guys. Is they were incredibly well read and educated, and you had to be to make the references and have the vocabulary that you needed to be a good rapper. You had to be well read, well educated. It goes up on current events, up on politics, up on history, and those guys used all those influences in their music, and so. while it's easy to dismiss somebody as Ice Cube as, oh, that's just another rapper, another celebrity, again, these guys do tons of reading. They stay up on current events. They've made it a point to educate themselves well beyond whatever was afforded to them as they were growing up, because it was an edge, in the rap game to have that knowledge, to have that vocabulary. And so Ice Cube was the first one that came out. And then we had these surprising post by 50 Cent, where he was just outraged at the disparity between Biden's tax plan, Trump's tax plan, and how much more he would be paying in taxes under Joe Biden. We'll pick that apart in just a second. But then we also had Waka Flocka follow suit with 50 Cent's argument, and I know this sounds ridiculous. And then I think today or over the weekend, we had rapper Lil Pump, who said, F Sleepy Joe. He goes, I'm voting for Donald Trump. And so it's interesting. Like, you don't want to put too much into it, but you got to imagine some of these people who are not as invested in these elections, who maybe will maybe go to vote for the first time, are looking at this and saying, hey, maybe I should take a second look at the Republican Party. Maybe it's not what I think it is. If they are willing to come out and sidestep what everybody else is doing in their industry, right? Don't you think that's going to have some influence on that generation at least on some segment of voters?
I think what it will do primarily is it'll break the long conceived notion that the black community is a monotonous, it is a one party voting block. And young people, they see media, they see Hollywood portraying this, that you have to vote for a Democrat because you're black. And this destroys that narrative in just a certain amount of time, because people's attention span is so short. People will remember this next week and they'll say, listen, maybe what they have to say makes some sense. At the very least, look into the positions that are making these rappers come to these conclusions in the first place and say it publicly to that effect.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I think the first story to break was the Ice Cube story. And from what I read up on it, it wasn't even that he came out supporting Trump. It's that he had this contract with Black America, which harkened back to Newt Gingrich's contract with America, and he brought it to the Biden campaign first, and they essentially said, no, we don't even want to look at it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to pursue that policy. I don't know what kind of conversation they had, but they essentially showed him the door.
Well, and that was the brilliant thing about it, is that he came out and said, look, I reached out to both sides of the aisle, and the only people that would talk to me were the Trump campaign. And essentially the president, and saying, and so regardless of who sits in that office, to be recognized, again, even Van Jones was willing to go and work with the president on criminal justice reform, and he still, till this day, gets a lot of flack for it. But it goes to show you that, again, what the media portrays the party as and the president as isn't what you're actually getting in reality. And I think Ice Cube was smart, and he's going to get a lot of flack for it for some time, but he was smart to call them out, even if it just means to get the Democrats in action and get them saying, hey, sorry we brushed you aside, sorry we dismissed you like that, let's take a look at what you wanted to put in front of us. I think it's still it empowers the black vote. It empowers his voice, especially in saying, hey, these guys aren't even listening to us, and all they care about is our votes. And once they're in office, if they're not paying attention to us when they're trying to get into office, what guarantee do you have that they're going to pay attention to you once they're in office? And they have the Obama administration to look at that as a reference. Most of those guys will tell you flat out that Obama did nothing for the black community, and that's part of the argument too. When you listen to some of these rappers talk, and Kanye and Ice Cube and 50 Cent, they know what happened during the Obama administration, and for the black community, it wasn't much.
Oh, that's right on the money. You put a real good point on it, and it's even more so is the fact that they're how do I word this? Go ahead.
So what I was going to say is what Ice Cube said about basically bringing this plan to the Democrats and to the Republicans was a very revealing moment for everyone. What it shows is that Democrats will address Black America when it's politically expedient to them, and it is not right now, which is a piss poor way to treat a demographic.
Right. That's what I was thinking, but you said it much better than I.
Also, so another point as far as economics, and I think 50 Cent had the more nuanced approach to why he's voting for Trump as opposed to you're ignoring us.
Yeah. Did Ice Cube say he was voting for Trump, or merely just this
you're
policy
right.
proposal thing?
He did say that he was actually communicating with him regarding his contract,
and that's all.
Which I would imply. I would say that would imply a vote.
Him in the same.
But either way, 50 Cent took the more economic approach, which if you know anything about economics, you realize that people that are in the top income brackets don't stay there forever. Generally, you pop in for a few years, then you're back to being normal like the rest of us. When you earn that money, so say you spend your entire teenage years learning to become an athlete, and then you have a great career in the NHL or NFL for a few years, you earn, say, $500,000 a year for those 3 years, but then you better make sure that money is well taken care of.
Well managed.
And then if you have the Biden or the Democrat plan where you're being taxed 15, 20, 30 more % on that money, your career is not going to last you as long. There's no incentive to make that leap to become excellent for those few years.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, I think there, and this was my point from earlier, is I think you get to a point where you're looking at what is the best policy, at least from Ice Cube's perspective. He's not even looking at necessarily his bank account but what's the best policy, 50 years down the road? What can we do today to have the best policy in this country, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now?
Yeah.
And once you start thinking like that, then you kind of open your eyes to realize, what's expedient today is not always going to be the best policy. It's actually very rarely what's expedient today is the best policy.
Well, and this is the other thing is that, now 50 Cent got a lot of flack for it, right? And again, not all these guys can handle it. And so now he said, supposedly in an interview, he says that I've never liked him. And the reason for that was actually apparently I'd totally forgotten about this. 50 Cent dated Chelsea Handler. And so Chelsea Handler called him out for basically taking the more selfish approach, which was, his pocketbook, and saying, I'm not going to pay all these taxes, and so apparently he was on the Tonight Show and he said, F Donald Trump, I never liked him, and, is trying to play it off, by saying he was just kind of bringing attention to the issue, not necessarily endorsing him. But on that social media post, he says, I don't care if Trump doesn't like black people. He says, 62%, are you out of your effing mind? He goes, I don't want to be 20 Cent. He goes, 62% is a very, very bad idea. And so I think the flack that he got from Chelsea Handler and probably a lot of other people in the industry is what spooked him, into kind of walking this back, but apparently, Chelsea Handler, basically says, hey, Effer, I'll pay your taxes in exchange for you coming to your senses happily. She goes, Black Lives Matter. That's you, Effer, remember? So this is the kind of mental,
very
nasty manipulation, again, that these woke white liberals will use on the black community for them to fall in line. Because I think they see the foundation crumbling on all of the stereotypes and this ugly narrative that they've built for years. And people are starting to realize that none of it is true.
They wouldn't be this scared if their internal polling didn't have a really scary picture to draw with the minority community.
Right. Well, Handler
Latinos, whether that's the African American community. I mean, we on our side, we've seen polling numbers that are saying Trump's going to be able to pull 20% of the minority community, which would
that's
a win.
An outlandish number for Republicans,
right?
Which
is a crazy high number for Republicans, and if anything even near that happens, Democrats have a reason to be concerned. But instead of being concerned and fixing their policies to better address why they are losing, the votes, they just want to attack people for
Yeah, look, I mean, like Chelsea Handler's words in interview with Jimmy Fallon was like, he shouldn't be influencing an entire swath of people who may listen to him because he's worried about his own personal pocketbook. What do you think all of America does? Like, what do you
literally
think they're basing?
Marketing 101, influence people and worry about your own pocketbook.
Right, exactly. That's exactly that is the primary reason. That is the primary reason people make the voting decisions that they do. And so she's giving them flack for it. And actually, quick little shout out to Peter Vivaldi, our buddy of mine over in Osceola County, Orange County, running for state house again. He's former state rep and running to get back into that seat. So thanks for watching. But that's exactly why they're in this business. I mean, and she's influencing just as many people for whatever her agenda is, right, as he is. And so it's complete hypocrisy as always. And, I don't know how much 50 Cent's actually walking that back. I think the bird's already out of the cage on that one.
Well, it's so interesting on Twitter that most of the time when people say something and it makes the news, when they say something outlandish on Twitter, especially if it's a pro-conservative thing or it's a, even just an anti-narrative thing, right? Even if it's just an anti-democratic narrative thing and they say that, and then all of a sudden it gets this much media attention, they have to walk it back. Well, most of the time, I would say the outlandish thing they said is their real feelings, and now they're walking it back. Walking it back.
They don't want to get canceled.
Yeah, they don't want to get canceled.
Stay woke.
The walking it back doesn't mean you're actually sorry. Doesn't mean your actual idea has changed in your head. It just means, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud.
You apologize for getting the reaction that you got.
Right. It's like I have a 4-year-old at home, right? He says sorry a lot, but he doesn't mean he's sorry. He means he's sorry he got caught. It's like the same thing.
Yeah, he doesn't feel bad about what he did. He just feels bad that he got. Yeah,
that he's getting yelled at for it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
All right, so thank you again to everybody watching the Yard Sign. We appreciate you. Please, if you could, do us a favor and just do a quick share on tonight's episode, and make sure you like, follow. Also, subscribe to the audio version of our podcast, which has just blown up in the past few months. So thanks to everybody who's listening throughout their commute, throughout their day, to the audio version of this podcast. You can find it on Google, Apple, and Spotify platforms, coming soon, Amazon and Audible. Really excited about that. So thank you guys to everyone who listens, watches, and supports the show. We were talking about a number of things today, and then in the background there over on our center camera, you'll see we've got the Supreme Court arguments happening in the Senate. Senator Mitch McConnell talking right now. Sorry about that for Kylan. Got the but also want to give a big shout out to Bake More Pies, Cord Zone, and the team for allowing us to use this beautiful studio. It just it elevates the quality of the show, and we're eternally grateful to be able to do the show here in such a beautiful studio. But getting back to the show, we're now going to dive in real quickly to Florida Amendments 2 and 3. Amendment number 2 is the minimum wage amendment to bump that up from $10 to $15 an hour. John Morgan, as is now kind of become tradition in every political cycle, is throwing a lot of money behind this one. And Amendment 3, and now I don't know why I'm going blank now. Amendment 3 is
jungle primaries.
That's right. All right. So allowing people to vote for any party in a primary, regardless of party. And so let's go ahead and start with Amendment 2. I mean, again, I think our points are pretty well known on this as to, and we've seen this play out in other cities, where they've tried this, and the very people who advocate for this, the people who are making minimum wage, mind you, on average, most people are already making $15 an hour and up, even though the minimum wage is at about 10. Is that it just results in a loss of jobs. It results in a loss of business. It results in businesses growing at a slower rate. And yet Democrats continue to push for this, calling it a living wage when a minimum wage was not meant to be a living wage in the first place. But because of their destruction of the family unit, now you find a lot of single income families or single income households who have no choice but to work maybe a minimum wage job and trying to provide for their family on that wage. And so you guys, why do you, what's John Morgan's angle on this? That's honestly my first question. Why do you think he's pushing for this?
Well, a lot of the push for this happened, was it 2018, 2019? He tried putting this on the 2018 ballot. It didn't make it. So he ramped up and he pushed it for the 2020 ballot. But a lot of the petitions for this were signed by, I think overwhelmingly young people who haven't had a job yet, who, making $15 an hour sounds great to them. But then more than that, this is all pre-COVID. So I guess the idea was, at least from some Democrats, or at least honest Democrats, that the economic hurt was going to be spread out over the next 6 years, because it doesn't take us to 15 overnight. The economic injury would be spread out, and that our economy was great. Well, now COVID has happened, and it's like, why hurt the economy in the first place is my question. Like, why would you handicap yourself in the first place just to make some other people feel better? But regardless of that, it's like, we're definitely not in a place right now to, even if you are a moderate and you're for this, on some level, we're not in an economic place to even afford doing this. So there's kind of two arguments I'm making here. Obviously, one is that it's wrong. And I'm not for it because you named all the points. A minimum wage should not be a living wage. A minimum wage is a minimum wage. It's a wage that you can learn some skills so that you can get better wages.
Precisely.
But beyond that, if you're on the fence about it, if you're, for whatever reason you think it's a good idea, right, this year's not the year for it. Like, we can't afford that at all right now. And why hurt the economy in the first place? So your take?
So there's a couple of different reasons as far as the economy goes, why a $15 minimum wage is not tenable. Like, you covered a few of them. Essentially, so first and foremost, the amount of people that make minimum wage is so minimal. It is like 2 to 5% of people make minimum wage. Those people are entering the workforce and don't have skills. Basically, working that job is essentially a paid internship where you're learning the skills which are necessary to actually earn the company money.
Now, we're bad people, right? We're bad people because we're telling people that if they're making a minimum wage, they don't have skills.
If you don't prove yourself and if you don't have the means by which to make a company money, no one's going to pay you in the first place.
Right.
So basically, if I want to hire someone as a business owner at $15 an hour, they have to know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
And as a business owner, someone that is familiar with business, if I have to pay $15 an hour, if you're not earning, you're getting fired.
Right.
And I'm going to do everything I can in my power to reduce labor costs. Basically, if I can buy tools, machinery, or enact processes that make labor lower, I'm going to do it. And you're going to lose your hours because of it and earn less.
Well, and in small businesses, what these studies have shown is that owners will take on the responsibilities of maybe that one individual that they had to let go to save that money. So whether it be washing dishes or bussing tables, let's say in a restaurant, for instance, because again, they have incredibly slim margins. So anybody, let's say a hostess that wasn't making, the fraction of minimum wage because they make tips, they might get rid of the hostess and just be the host themselves. They're the owner anyways. That's the first face they're going to see. Not necessarily a bad thing for a restaurant. And yet that's 1 or 2 or 3 jobs that are done away with simply because that restaurant can't afford to pay those wages without raising the cost of prices to their consumers, which again is the other caveat in all of this. It's is the fact that the people who are affected the most by the increase in minimum wages are the people making minimum wage because the cost of everything goes up. And they're the ones that are trying to scrap and save every single dollar. And then all of a sudden, everything goes up because everybody's making more money. And the cost of running a business and the cost of making products goes up. And so everything that they are consuming, especially the people in the lower income brackets, are now having to pay more for all the things that they consume. So whatever they would have made in terms of an increase in salary, per se, or for wages, is completely wiped out by the increase of cost of living.
That's 100% right. 100% right.
of all the redistribution schemes that the Democrats have come up with, this is the stupidest one because it makes
Just
you feel
raise
good.
prices and raise wages.
It's a great feel-good maneuver, but like Johnny was saying, it results in the same thing happening. Just now we have it spread out, over the next 3 months. I'll make this offer to anyone who doesn't believe that minimum wage is a terrible idea. I will buy you a copy of Basic Economics. The first people in the comment section that want to debate me on minimum wage being a good thing, I will buy you a copy of Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, one of the best minds in the economy today.
Amazing book.
If you haven't read it, honestly, read it. I mean, I'd love to see a counterpunch to that book. I'll read it myself, but I mean, debate or tell me what in that book is not correct.
He has a new one out, actually, the discrimination and disparities. It's also really, really good to get off topic real fast. But yeah, Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, read that and you'll never support a minimum wage. The most minimum wage is zero. Is being unemployed. That's
actually, minimum wages were developed as a way to suppress black people in the post-antebellum or the antebellum portion of America, basically because no one would pay that quantity because you had no skills. And basically requiring people to pay that much would keep black people out of the workforce. So it was a literal Jim Crow relic, unlike the filibuster.
Unlike the filibuster. That is...
And very much like Licata's hat. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. It was a terrible reference to make there.
Trying to be funny.
But I wanted to interject really quick with this because now that Senator Mitch McConnell is done with his speech, whatever it was he was talking about up there, they've actually are now going to start taking the votes. Whoa! So this is the do or die moment here for the Senate and the Senate Republicans on whether or not that Amy Coney Barrett is going to be our next Supreme Court justice. That is unfurling as we speak. What I do like about C-SPAN, honestly, is when they put up the counter, as people vote, and that's always nice. And then but I wish they would say like who voted which way. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't, but I do like how they count the votes in real time. So we're getting down to showtime.
They come up and they put the thumbs up, thumbs down.
But this is where I wish our system were a little bit more like England's, in terms of Parliament, where like if you've got like an issue that you got to work out, like let's get in that room. One side argues, the other side argues. You've got
fist fights.
But they're literally having an issue debate on the floor, and they aren't these speeches where oftentimes these senators, these Congress people are giving speeches to an empty room. They're literally working out these issues in real time, and to me that seems like a much healthier way and probably a better way to weed out between your good and your bad legislators.
We left them for a reason.
Dude, I don't know. If you watch the Parliament in session, man, it is fascinating.
The ratings on C-SPAN of Parliament are so high compared to the ratings of all of our own Congress.
Because it's compelling.
Is an American network.
Because watching Parliament debate issues is entertaining. So good. So, I mean, it is better than any presidential debate, any political debate you've ever seen.
Well, it's half debate, half just riot, and half,
they're yelling at each other. Yeah. They're insulting each other. They're joking with
we
each
left
other
for a reason, but at the same time,
I'm not saying adopt their laws.
It's a little rancorish.
At least adopt some of the theater. I mean, at least make it interesting. I think honestly, if our legislative process were a little bit more like that, I think more people would pay attention. I mean, we love a good debate. We love a good fight. And that's part of the reason why people love Trump, because they like somebody that's going to go out there and just
what's the saying? Sometimes he punches you in the face. Sometimes he punches a baby.
What?
I don't know. It's a Ben Shapiro thing.
Yeah, it's something that's about Trump. Sometimes you hit the issue right in the head.
Yeah, he hits the issue right in the face and he wins. And sometimes he hits a baby, and it's like, but at least he hits. I
don't think Ben Shapiro's accurate in that one, but
all right. So we're gonna have that. We're gonna have C-SPAN's coverage up there on the U.S. Senate going while we continue to do the show. Thank you everybody again for watching the Yard Sign. We appreciate you for watching as always. Be sure to like, share, comment, follow us on all of our social media platforms, and don't forget, if you missed any part of today's show or any previous show, you can catch previous episodes on YouTube and on the audio version of our podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google podcast platforms. It was pretty cool, actually. The other day, I just searched the Yard Sign on Google, and the podcast actually just comes up, and you can play it right from the browser, right from the Google search results. It was pretty neat.
Whoa, we're moving up.
I know.
Moving up in the world.
Tell me about it. So let's see. Let's bring up
Amendment 3.
Well, yeah. So Amendment 3, we were talking about.
Before we got in the weeds.
Yeah, and I know. Well, we got confused because Chris wanted to talk about the old Amendment 4, and then that got us into, well, let's actually talk about Amendment 3, okay? But it's one of these things that, and I don't like the way this argument is framed by the Republicans, like from a messaging standpoint, because basically the way they're framing it is that, well, they want other people to pick Republican candidates, and that's not wrong. I just think there's got to be a better way to explain it. But essentially, what it means is that in a primary, would it be just primaries or primary in general?
So the version of Amendment 3 that's up for vote this year is interesting because both the Florida Democratic Party and the Florida Republican Party are against it, and it's really weird. But it wants jungle primaries. So it says at a primary, during primary election season.
So who's funding this then?
All
Anarchists.
Voters,
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
anarchists.
the 501c4 called All Voters Vote, and 501c4s, you can't look behind the money wall.
Got it.
So, yeah, your guess is as good as mine. But the way it would work if this passed is that all the Republicans running for a certain office and all the Democrats running for a certain office would be on the same ballot during primary season, and whoever the top two winners are would go to the general, regardless of their party affiliation. This is terrible. We might be in favor of open primaries. There's a pretty healthy debate within the Republican Party of whether or not open primaries, closed primaries, semi-open primaries are something we want to go for. What I think Johnny's talking about is there are a lot of Republicans who are very against open primaries or changing the system at all. So they're making this argument from a anti-open primary stance, where the best argument against Amendment 3 is, look, this is, if you want semi-open primaries or you want open primaries, that's a different thing completely.
Yes.
Compared to what this is. This, you could end up in a general election with two Democrats on the general ballot. That doesn't give Republicans in that geographic
It's an election
area.
before an election, essentially.
Right. It's an election before an election, and that, and primaries have very different turnout rates than general elections. So it's overall a bad idea, and it's interesting that both the Florida Democratic Party and the Florida Republican Party.
But let's be honest. Oh, we got our first results up there. What do we see? 52
to 43.
52 to
It's
43.
done.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it. It's done.
We got our 52.
We got 52. So
And then,
who was the no?
Now, who was the one? Was it you that was? Well, I mean, I knew coming in, but you were. I didn't want to steal your thunder as to who was going to be swearing her in tomorrow.
Yes. No, the wonderful Justice Thomas will be swearing her in tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's going to be quite the ceremony.
Which
The most
those
conservative-
evil Republican racists put into
Right.
the Supreme Court.
The only African American on the Supreme Court is going to swear in the only Catholic mother of 7 onto the Supreme Court.
Oh, it's very poetic. You're gonna have part 1.5.
Well, and so, breaking news. Looks like Amy Coney Barrett is going to be the next justice on the Supreme Court, being sworn in more than likely tomorrow morning by Justice Clarence Thomas. That's going to be exciting to watch. Another big win for the Trump administration. And at this point, you got to wonder, does this discourage turnout for the Democrats? For some people that, were hoping that this vote wasn't going to happen before the election. Does this deflate some of their turnout?
Absolutely not. They're going to come back fierce as ever. They're going to be like, oh, we need to get Joe Biden so we can pack the Supreme Court, and now we can have 13 justices, and they're all going to be liberals for 38 years.
What do you think, Cotter?
It's the interesting thing about a lot of Democrats is they don't actually understand how the process works. So they're just angry and they're just going to go vote for they're going to go vote their party line, and they're going to say we're going to change everything. And it's like that's not how this works.
Do you think that the eventual packing of the Supreme Court, if God forbid Joe Biden wins, leads to dissolution of America? Do you think states?
So let's step that back a couple steps. In the unlikely scenario, my opinion, that Joe Biden wins the presidency, I don't see a world in which we lose control of the Senate, or even if we did lose control of the Senate, that they would have the ability to pass legislation, because they would need a supermajority to change the law, right? Because they would have to get through cloture to change the law to add justices to the court legislatively. Then they'd have to actually fill those seats. So long as we maintain a majority in the Senate, none of that's happening. So it's a moot point.
There's a chance we don't.
Like I said, even if the worst case scenario is that we lose the Senate, 50-50. That's not a Senate that's going to pass legislation because even if it's 49-51, that's not a Senate that's going to be able, because you'll have Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, each one of them taking a turn at 24-hour filibusters. It'll go on for days and it'll never end. So it's not a situation in which it'll happen. And plus, unless they actually terminated the cloture vote for legislation, so they use the nuclear option on legislation, which is not something they're even proposing. Now, they could get mad enough where they go that direction.
They've gotten really mad at us the last few years. Have you not noticed?
Yeah.
They're looking at ending the filibuster too.
And regardless, I think the 2022 map for the Senate is a good map for us, and post
Malone
post census the House map is really good for us. So I think we're in okay shape, even in a nightmarish scenario. We can hold fast.
All right, then. Well, I'll give you some confidence. Thanks, Chris. If it doesn't go the way you say, I'm going to come to your house. And
that's why I see you went and
kill all your
woods.
landscaping.
All right, I live in the woods. All right, so I'm you're always welcome.
All right. So again, congratulations to Amy Coney Barrett and the Senate Republicans. Mitch McConnell getting it done.
Cocaine Mitch.
My goodness, that guy.
I didn't think it was going to be 50.
just a quick side note. You know what I call him?
He's going to go
Mitch?
down in history as maybe one of this country's most influential politicians. Go ahead, Chris.
They call him Cocaine Mitch because apparently one of his stepfathers or his father-in-law's boats had some cocaine smuggled on it, and now he's Cocaine Mitch because of it. It was a primary opponent who actually gave him the nickname because he was a Republican, not a Democrat. But interesting piece of history about why they call him Mitch.
See, and I was asking Anibal about that, and he had no clue. He couldn't
I
tell
thought
me
it's
what
because
the
he
origin of the name.
absolutely needed to do a line in order to be animated at all.
Well, yeah, because what you have the turtley Mitch McConnell, and I can't see the correlation between Mitch McConnell's demeanor and cocaine by any stretch of the matter.
That man is a human turtle.
Anyway, thanks, Anibal, for being wrong and leaving the opportunity to explain it to America.
Not only looks like it. I mean, he's always very slow and deliberate, and it's just the way he talks and the accent. I mean,
he has some zingers.
He has some zingers.
Oh, he's brilliant. Well, don't get me wrong.
That's what I thought it was from. I thought in order for him to do a zinger, it's like, oh, he's animated today. It's still a slow zinger, but it's like, oh.
It almost hurts more because it's very slow and deliberate.
To get to this,
maybe he does. Maybe he needs a little bit. Maybe just a little.
That's what I always thought it was in reference to.
Let's see. Oh, it looks like they're reading off the vote count there, and
I want to see Chuck Schumer's face.
I don't think we can get.
That's what I always thought it was in reference to. So
I know
because I'm such a political wonk and nerd. I was actually watching the confirmation hearing for
you guys aren't wearing your, there we go, 52-48, the final count. Let me see if I can get some volume on here. You guys aren't wearing headphones, so you're not going to be able to hear.
That's fine. I feel it in my soul.
Yeah.
Actually, I just felt like something came through me, and like my life is different now because of this nomination being confirmed.
It's a huge win. I mean, again, people, I think unless you've been paying attention more so than others, you don't realize, obviously, the impact that this administration has had on the federal court at a national level. I mean, this is right up there. This is kind of like the cherry on top, but the number of appointments that the president has made in the past almost 4 years now, I mean, it's been unbelievable.
And this goes to show the difference in philosophy on the justice system between Democrats and Republicans. We are cheering for someone who's openly said, I'm going to come to verdicts that I don't agree with. And they're like, no, we can't have that. We want all of our verdicts to be agreed with, by our philosophy, So it doesn't...
Well, the left believes in philosopher kings. So it's.
Well, and they believe in amending, they believe in that the Constitution is flawed. They won't say it's flawed, but they believe the Constitution is flawed, or as they call it, a living document. And they want to change it. They want to change, again, President Obama, very transparent about wanting to fundamentally change this country. And again, has it been an easy road? No. Has there been a lot of mistakes? Absolutely. But do we still have a better democracy than any other that has been designed before it? No. And if there were, we probably would have adopted it by now, or pieces of it by now. Again, if this country was such a horrible place to live, then why do people come here in droves year after year? I mean, you have millions of people who move here every single year.
It's well put.
I kind of like this show. You guys are like
just nailing them today. I'm
very concise today.
What do you want me to add here?
Oh man.
No, literally, if the Constitution were a living, breathing document, you would have the law changing with every person that's elected into office.
That brings up an interesting point.
It would literally be whatever you say at that moment in time.
So Justice Scalia, one of the things I don't think a lot of people know this about him is that he advocated that Amendment 5, the process to actually change the Constitution, not through the courts, but the actual amendment process, should be easier. And he said if it was easier, just easier than what it is, not easy, but easier than what it is, he says, then we wouldn't be looking to the courts to change the Constitution all the time.
As much as I love him, I disagree with that, because I think that the amendments in the Constitution itself is a very, very important document. It does not need to be changed that often. And I think excusing the Democrats for using the judicial branch as legislature, a super legislature of sorts, is inappropriate by any means. And I don't think excusing it is acceptable.
But if it was easier for the legislature to actually change the Constitution, would they be looking to make the court into a super legislature?
The point of it being so hard is so there is gridlock, okay? The government should not change very often, okay? It doesn't need to be a consistent, whoever's popular at that point in time making the law, okay? If it is that important, it will require a majority of people to agree on it, okay? Yep. It can't be just Democrats like this who are changing the entire Constitution. It has to be some Democrats and all the Republicans, or all the Republicans and some Democrats have to agree on it in order to make a change.
Or one party holds a supermajority.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be. I think the founders designed gridlock on purpose to make it so that
of course they did
things that are important.
I agree
things that
they
we
did.
hold dear.
I agree they did. I was just kind of putting that nerdish piece of information out there that,
well, and I said
even
this last
Justice
week.
Scalia was saying that it should be easier to amend the Constitution, and I think he was saying that as a justice.
Do you think he was saying it should be easier, or if it were easier, we wouldn't have this?
I think the latter.
Okay,
The latter.
yeah.
That was partially the point that I made last week, that our Constitution was designed to be deliberate, to be extensive, to make it hard to change, to make it difficult to cause change in this country.
These guys spent years of their life doing this.
2/3 of a vote, 63 votes, whatever the number is. But they quite literally thought of everything. That's why again they were visionaries, because because the Constitution has been able to withhold the test of time, and is still very much relevant today. And much of their writings leading up to the establishment of the Constitution, again, still rings true today because they deliberated for hours and hours and days and weeks on what exactly should be in this document. Yes, and years.
I agree, and I'm not presenting my own feelings on the case. I'm saying it's interesting that Scalia would say this, and then even in the Heller decision, he said, look, it goes along with his judicial philosophy that he's saying, look, I'm telling you what the text means. If you don't like what the text means, we have a legislature and we have an amendment process to go change that.
The court is not that. Yes.
The court is not that. And even to then back up that argument, he's saying, well, maybe Congress should make it easier for Congress to then change things, but don't come looking to me. Yeah. I'm not saying I agree with that, but it's interesting that he even went that direction.
All right, so he's not a god anymore. He's just 95% good in my book. Also, I can say judicial. I redeemed myself there. I got it. Judicial.
I don't know. Kind of slipped up there.
Shut up, Johnny.
What's the next topic?
So the last topic of the night is very much kind of in line with what we were just talking about. Pelosi seeking reelection to her role as Speaker of the House. Of course, I would like to think that we're going to kind of put a stop to that in this election and hopefully regain majority of the House. It's going to be close. I think we need 5 seats to do that without losing any. So certainly not easy, right? But it can be done. It can be accomplished. It just, again, it's going to be so hard to predict the outcome of this election. The other thing is going to be, is she going to have somebody challenge her from within? I mean, we're seeing these far left progressives, Marxists, socialists, whatever you want to call them, the squad, if you will, certainly being at the forefront of that, who want to see a change in leadership and want to push the party and this country far to the left. So does Pelosi get contested in her speakership?
I have an unpopular opinion. The speakership was originally supposed to be the most moderate, the middle of the chamber, not the party leader, the previous party leader of one side or the other. What I think is actually really possible this election is, in the scenario that Democrats control the body by a vote, that Republicans could probably peel the 5 or 6 blue dog Dems and name one of them speaker. And it would take some doing, but that's actually in line with I think the actual role of what the speakership should be.
The spirit, yeah.
So and how the speaker is chosen is I don't know if our viewers necessarily know that or not, but right now it's the party leader is chosen inside a closed door caucus by each side, and then they nominate their party leader to run for speaker against the other party leader, and everyone just votes along party lines, so the party that controls the body wins. If you actually have a scenario in which it's so thin, you might have a scenario where she could hold on to her party leadership. Maybe she wins her party leadership. Maybe she doesn't. That's really what I think the topic is will she hold her seat as party leader? But even if she does hold her seat as party leader, can Republicans, swallow their own pride to try and carve out some, blue dog Dems and actually make one of them, the moderate and
that would be a very interesting scenario. I'd love to see that play out.
Well, it would
prefer to have a majority instead, but
and I mean, I would prefer to have a majority, but I would also prefer to see the speakership returned to its natural role. Yeah. Johnny was bringing up Parliament earlier, and if you look at Parliament, the speaker is the moderator. It is the most moderate member of the body.
What do you think that would be?
I mean, I don't think Connor Lamb's going to keep his seat, but probably someone like a Connor Lamb, like a Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi's not running, so neither of those two names are actually in the running for it.
That's a letdown.
Right? But the actual rules don't call for it to be a member.
Let's just call it what it is. You just want to get Tulsi's name in there. Because I know you're a fanboy.
I mean,
like you're blushing.
Seriously,
oh
though,
my goodness!
I didn't just say all
Does
that.
Does your wife know about this? Oh my goodness!
Hey, we all like Tulsi.
After hearing her speak about some of the Supreme Court stuff, I actually like her more.
Well, and I think Tulsi might be running in 2022 against Mazie Hirono as an independent.
Interesting.
That
Actual block of wood, Mazie Hirono.
Yeah. So like that would change the game a little bit. But again, that doesn't mean that I'm, a super, fanboy necessarily. I don't
back.
Huh? No, I'm not walking it back. I'm a Republican. There's a lot of things in her platform I don't agree with, but I do think that we should have more moderates in chairmanships and in speakerships and in positions to kind of call balls and strikes again. Instead of just saying, well, we're going to have AOC, be speaker next. Like that's a scary thought.
So who in the party do you think is going to not vote for Nancy Pelosi as speaker?
In the speakership vote? No one.
Are there consequences for that? What do you think they would do to
they strip you of your they strip you of your committee assignments, they strip you of your chairmanships, they strip you of
there are penalties that would make this a bad idea for you as a House member.
Unless you have the votes.
Yeah, but the squad came after Pelosi.
The squad came after Pelosi.
And that's like 4 people though.
No, the squad came after Pelosi.
But I don't think they suffered any consequences because of it. In fact, if anything, they basically drew the line in the sand and they said, "Lady, look, we're going to give you one last shot at this before we really come after you." And she made a deal with them.
Yeah,
she made a deal with them that she was only going to do one more term, and that's why I'm thinking they have to have something lined up. The Progressive Caucus has to have something lined up to challenge Pelosi, because I think especially losing the Supreme Court seat and not being able to push back as hard as they'd like to try to prevent ACB from getting on the Supreme Court. I think there's going to be a changeover in leadership on the Democratic side.
Oh, I agree.
Who do you think that would be, Johnny? Who do you think they'd fill that spot with? That would be.
It has to be someone more senior than like an AOC, or they have to find a senior woke Democrat.
Is Feinstein running again?
But she's in the Senate.
And she's too old school. Like these,
right.
the squad is going to want somebody that is closer to their generation and certainly more in line with their beliefs. I don't know. I mean, there's too many of them. I mean, for me to really kind of keep track of them all.
They did challenge Nancy in the closed door caucus meeting. And she barely won her party leadership, or at least so the story goes. I mean, that's not a public record. But she barely won her party leadership. So if she loses the party leadership vote, then she's not even up to run for speaker. So really what she's announcing is that she intends to run for party leader again. And that's where the actual fight's going to happen. And that fight happens behind closed doors. So
yeah, but even happening behind closed doors, right? Even happening behind closed doors, they're still going to, it's going to get leaked. Oh, and it's going to become a story, and the party's going to seem divided. And so what I find interesting is this maybe the perfect timing with the divided Democratic Party going into, let's say, potentially another loss of a presidential election.
Right.
Like, does that knock off Schumer and Pelosi, and do we see the next generation of the Democratic Party?
Well, Schumer's an interesting situation, because that man is deathly afraid of AOC, which is why he's moved so far to the left, because he's very, very, very concerned that in 2022 AOC is going to primary him for a Senate seat, which is glorious. Which is why he has moved so far to the left, which is why if he were to control the Senate, AOC would actually be in control of the Senate, because he would do anything to keep her from primarying him, because he would lose that primary all day, every day. So, again, I think you're right. Chuck Schumer has some concerns of his own. I don't think Senate Democrats would get rid of him. But I do think in the House, you could have a situation where you get a free-for-all, which is why I brought up the scenario I did, in which if it's narrow and we come on the heels of Trump winning, and keeping the Senate, and it's like, and they lost seats in the House, it's a very easy argument for anyone to make that Nancy Pelosi should not keep her leadership, in which case there'll be a leadership fight. but then they're going to go to the progressive caucus, right? They're going to go to the progressive side. And at that point, then you could have a party split where the blue dogs say, Republicans, make us a deal. Make us a deal. Don't let this be our leader, and you could end up with a very interesting time and an actual moderate.
So Hector brings up a DWS. Look, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, ever since she got caught fixing the election for Hillary, has been like on the outs. You know what I mean? Like I think she's been toxic.
Mm-hmm. No one touches.
And so that to me is a non-starter. Now, what he also proposes is who would the Democrat donor class want in party leadership, and this is the thing that AOC brags about quite a bit, which is the fact that she does little to no fundraising, but still gets tons of money coming in, simply because of her visibility. And so, honestly, I think she would probably have the audacity to make a run at it for herself. But I would venture to guess that there would probably be somebody more experienced and, that can navigate the internal politics better than she would, to be able to kind of take that seat away from the Democrat establishment.
Yeah, I do not see AOC becoming speaker if Democrats control the House. I don't think she can win the party leadership.
She's not even well liked enough to get
I don't think she can win the party leadership. She's a great donor. She has great relationships with the donor class. I could see if Democrats and the donors, kind of got together and they say, okay, Nancy's out, but who's in? The speaker does not have to be a member, but the party leader does. So they could make AOC party leader and, give the speakership to,
Look, if I'm a Democrat donor, if I'm in the donor class of the Democratic Party, I'm looking at them and saying, what are you guys doing? Putting up an octogenarian for president, and who can barely keep it together, and then basically discarding this whole great bench of people that they had, because again, I think we'll see Buttigieg.
I was about to bring him up.
I think he'll be in Congress at some point.
Well, no, he could actually be the donor class loves him so much, and he has a certain degree of charisma and experience behind him as a mayor, supposedly. I don't think that counts as experience, but I could see the donor class counting that, where they could say, again, the speaker does not have to be a sitting member.
Well, it amuses me that they coalesced so quickly and tried to make a star out of Pete Buttigieg being a small town mayor. And this only years after they completely disparaged and destroyed Sarah Palin for being a small town mayor. It always comes around. It's cyclical.
Yeah. And have those senators that have no standards.
No standards whatsoever. But no, Pete Buttigieg could be a really interesting, compromise candidate between AOC and Nancy. I'm interested in seeing something different. I don't like the idea of just, this is the party leader, so they're going to be speaker. I think the party leaders should fight like party leaders should, and the speakership should be, the adult in the room.
I'm going to vote Hector for speaker on the yard sign. He's making some excellent points in the comments section. Honestly, you contribute so much in the comments section. It'd be great to have you here to have this lively discussion in person. You'd really add a lot to the episode, so come on next week, Hector.
Yeah. No, he knows. He knows he has an open invitation. And so, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. So we're going to close out the show as we always do with my little favorite segment, which is what did we not get to? What's the one story, issue, thing that you're following right now that we didn't get to talk about on today's show? So we'll go ahead and start. Am I going to throw you in the deep end here, Licata?
Yeah, you're throwing us in the deep end. Chris,
I'll take it.
All right. So, Kylan goes first.
Amendment 4 from 2018. We have this long-standing contention now with the liberals that Republicans have somehow changed the amendment to include court costs and restitutions. Listen, I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough to know that these things have always been part of sentencing. And if you look at the revisions of the amendment, this has never changed to include this. This is what the voters voted for. Nobody would have voted for this if it meant that when you stole someone's car and crashed it into a pond, like it happens in St. Pete all the time, you can vote before giving that person their car value back. No one would have voted for that. It's anti-citizen, it's anti-justice, it's the spirit of it is all wrong. So I would like to see the left learn to read their laws and actually know what the hell they're talking about when they put things in the ballot and vote for them and don't get what they want because the verbiage sucked.
Well, I think the verbiage was fine. I mean, the verbiage
For them, it sucked.
Oh, for them it sucked. Yeah, I mean, the verbiage was very clear. I think it said what it needed to say, and it said, look, when you complete your sentence, they're trying to make that a question as like, well, your sentence meant your jail time, not your fees and restitution. And it's like, no, that's always been encompassed in the word sentence.
Right. Yep.
Your debt to society has to be paid, and then we're happy for you to vote again. I voted for Amendment 4. Like, I was in fan of this, but had it said like, oh yeah, no, like, you can get off on good behavior.
When you got out of jail, you're allowed to vote now.
You're allowed to vote now. It's like I would have voted no. So don't change the meeting on it on me after it, because again, it only passed. It has to pass by like 60%, and I think it only passed by like 62. So you're saying you have to ask the question: if it said what they want it to say, would they have lost 3%?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It would never have passed.
It would have never have passed.
I mean, you are one of 3% that voted for it that made it pass, jackass.
Right. Well, I think it was written well. I think it was a good law. It says if you've paid all your debts back to society, you can vote again.
Yeah, I voted for it. I didn't have a problem with it.
I voted against it.
Well, you vote against most things.
You don't know that.
No, look, I think because you make mistakes in life. Look, you could basically lose your license for any variety of reasons, and it's considered a felony. And I think just because you happen
driving
to be
on a suspended license or driving on a
right, exactly. I think just because you happen to be a bad driver or an irresponsible driver or whatever it is doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the right to vote.
No,
I mean, there's any range
that should be revised as not being
felonies.
a felony, not that felons should
but
be
see,
able to vote.
That's a different argument. We can have a criminal justice reform argument of what should and what should not be a felony. That's a different conversation.
I think that would be a more prudent step to take before allowing felons to vote.
Yeah, but then at that point, how many laws are you having to revisit to determine
I don't care. It's
whether or not they qualify to be allowed to vote?
Take that project on, please. I want to see how much hair you lose.
So
I'm already halfway there. But as a moral standpoint, why would you ever consider it a moral standpoint to allow someone to get their rights back when you've taken something from somebody, or you still owe? You cost society.
I'm not saying when they still owe. I'm saying once they've paid
no,
back.
not you, but the left.
Okay. They're trying to make the law sound.
Why would you think it is okay? You've cost the society tens of thousands of dollars to put your ass through the criminal justice system, and now it's okay for them to go back and have all their rights back without having to pay back what they cost society.
Right.
Not just the person they stole from or the person they cost money, but society. You and I pay for those courts. They're expensive. They're expensive for a reason. Right. You should not be able to get what you have unless you pay back my tax dollars to go to other things that are more
and some
important.
of the arguments the left has made on this is utterly ridiculous. I mean, they're trying to call it a poll tax in the 11th Circuit. And it's like it's not a poll tax. It's they have a fine for a crime that they committed, and
I'm not getting
definitely
a poll
not
tax.
a poll
Are you
tax.
getting a poll tax?
No, but but they're calling it a poll tax in front of the 11th Circuit, and the 11th Circuit said, "Go pound sand."
All right, Licata, you jumped on Verkuylen's topic there. So what? Because we're trying to wrap up the show here. So what's the story we missed or story you're watching?
I got nothing.
Nothing.
I'm trying to stay out of it for at least the next week.
Rub my coattail a little bit. So
yeah. Let's see what the
all
next
right.
8
So
days bring.
I'll let Hector fill in for you on this one then, because he did chime in on what did we miss. The rising, the Latin American. Well, it can't be the rising Latin American fall, but basically the continued infiltration of radical leftism throughout Latin America as the left continued to take on power in Bolivia and Chile. And so what does this mean for outliers like Colombia and Brazil?
That's an Anibal question?
no, that's Hector.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a question from Hector to Anibal, because I'm not that.
No, that's a great
Super
topic.
wonkish.
Yeah. Look, and I've been trying to get Anibal and George, who works with the show behind the scenes, to do their own kind of foreign policy podcast. But
that'd be really
hopefully
cool.
we'll get to that soon. Twitter finally catching up. U.S. Senate confirms Amy Coney Barrett to
Yes.
Supreme
Also,
Court.
I have a Twitter now. It is @Chris Verkuylen.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I
hang
have
on.
succumbed to social media. I have an Instagram and a Twitter now, at Christopher Kylan and at C.Verkylan on Instagram. So follow me for pictures
All right,
of the
so
woods.
At Chris with an H, right?
Yes.
Well, capitalization doesn't matter
Yes, it does.
Not on Twitter.
I have a capital K in my last name. It is important. Part of my heritage. Don't appropriate.
So let's see. Let's go ahead and pull it up. There we go. Look. Oh, there it is.
There I am.
Look at that.
All right, wonderful.
So
at me, bro.
So now you're
me,
not
bro.
just at the yard sign. So.
All the dumb things I say, you can address them on Twitter now. You're welcome, Left. See you there.
All right, for me, I've got to say, it's the continued. I love the Rappers for Trump story we talked about earlier, and I think this is going to be the first of many stories like this that are going to continue to kind of chip away. Again, Trump is an anomaly, and because he was such a public figure. Before becoming a Republican and before becoming the president, that these people know that all these things that they're saying about them isn't true. And so, when you've got Sean Puffy Combs, Diddy Combs, P. Diddy, whatever you want to call him, out there trying to make claims that Trump is a racist and Trump is a bigot and all this stuff. Meanwhile, he has 2 decades worth of pictures with the guy at various parties and fundraisers and events. It's kind of hard to take him seriously. And so for me, I think, from a cultural standpoint, let's be clear on what this is. To me, it's not about celebrity, right? Or stardom, and kind of dictating our politics. To me, it's about a change in the culture. And the fact that it's coming from the hip hop culture, I think is says a lot. I think it's going to have a huge impact down the road. And if Democrats, this is the thing. Democrats are starting to ignore more and more the black community because the Hispanic population in this country is getting larger and more vocal and more influential. And so the black community sees this happening, especially those that are involved at the ground level. And so I think the black community is starting to reassess their loyalty and realize that they've been blindly loyal to the Democrats for all these years. And hopefully this is the beginning of a culture change. So that's the story I'm watching. All right. So thanks again, Chris Licata there on the left, Christopher Kylan on the right-hand side.
Christopher Kylan.
That's right. At Christopher Kylan on Twitter, at C.Verkylan on Instagram. So you can go and harass him there.
Yes.
Thank you so much for watching The Yard Sign. Make sure you subscribe to the audio version of our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google podcast platforms. On behalf of those guys and the rest of the show and all the phenomenal cast members of The Yard Sign who kind of come in and out, we thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Bake More Pies and Court Zone for the use of their beautiful studio. For more information on that, visit bakemorepies.com. We will see you next Monday, which is going to be right before Election Day.
The election.
Right before Election Day. It's going to be a beautiful thing. We'll see you then. Thank you so much. Have a great night.